Hi, I'm Lalitha.
And I'm Chef Paul Shufelt.
And today in this segment, Paul, what are we going to be creating today?
We are going to be putting together a delicious grilled salmon dish with a lovely beet salad and a little bit of wild rice pilaf as well.
Perfect. That sounds delicious.
What
are we going to get started with?
Well, the first thing we want to do, we're trying to do as much as we can on the grill. So we're going to be grilling off our beets, kind of using our grill as an oven in this case. So I want to, I've actually just boiled them off. I basically put them in cold water. Once the water came to a boil, gave it about 2 minutes. I just want to speed up the process a little bit. It's going to take a long time on the grill. So I've got my beets here that have just, as I said, just been boiled off. Just going to set them like so. Just a little bit of seasoning. A little bit of pepper. Beets have a ton of great flavor on their own, so I don't need to do a lot to add to that. I'm just going to put just a little drizzle of olive oil, just like so.
Beets are a great source of a chemical known as anthocyanins, which are fantastic for cardiovascular health. And not only that, they're so rich in color that they're a great addition to any dish.
Yeah, they're lovely. And I've just come to appreciate them in the last few years. When I was a kid, I was always scared of them, but now I've really come to enjoy them. So as simple as that, I've made my own little pan or pot, whatever you like to call here. We're going to put that on the grill in a couple minutes. They'll take about 20 minutes. You just want to be able to tell that they're fork tender.
Okay.
So we'll get those going. Now that we have that out of the way, we're just going to do a quick marinade for the salmon. So I've just got about a generous tablespoon of water in the bottom of my bowl here. I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of grainy Dijon.
Dijon is wonderful. It's very pungent, I find, so you don't need too much of it to create a marinade.
Right, and this is what we're going to do. This is just going to be basically rubbed over the top of the salmon once we start grilling it. Okay. As you said, it does have a lot of flavor, so I don't need to let this marinate beforehand. This will do the job as we're grilling. So I'm just going to take a good generous portion here of fresh dill.
Just while you're doing that, tell me a little bit about why you think marinades are important.
You know, meat and protein in general tends to have a fair amount of flavor, but you know, you want to put something on there that complements it and really makes it come together. You know, in this case, salmon loves mustard, loves fresh dill. I'm not doing anything really outside the box here, and this is really simple. And as you saw, I'm not concerned with perfectly chopped dill. This is for a marinade for barbecuing at home, so keep it simple.
And the beautiful thing about this marinade is that there are only 2 ingredients, essentially. So we got the Dijon mustard, the dill, and some water.
Just like so. We're going to set that aside. Now our marinade is ready to go.
Perfect.
Last thing we want to do in respect to our preparation is we want to get our vinaigrette ready for our salad, our beet salad. So I've just got an egg yolk in here. We've got to create an emulsion. Now if you want to just make a simple balsamic and oil vinaigrette and just mix, you know, sort of 2 parts to 1, that's totally fine. But I like sort of that creamy feeling, a little bit that coating that this dressing provides. So 1 egg yolk. We're going back to the grainy mustard. The egg yolk, the mustard, and this little bit of honey that I'm going to put in here all provide a little bit of emulsifying power. So it's going to help everything come together. So I'm going to put about 1/2 teaspoon of that. So that's just going to contrast the acidity of the mustard and the acidity of the white balsamic vinegar. Okay.
One thing I love about balsamic vinegar, whether it's a dark balsamic vinegar or a white that we're using in this dressing right here, is that it is very low in sodium. So for you to create your own dressing at home, using these types of vinegars allows you to have some more control over the amount of salt that you're putting onto your salads.
As you say that, I'm putting just a touch of seasoning in there. Just a little bit of salt and pepper. Okay, so I'm going to just have you, if you don't mind, just hold the bowl.
Sure.
So to create that emulsion, I need to whisk vigorously and slowly incorporate a little bit of oil. Okay, so I did about 2 tablespoons of the vinegar. I'm going to do about 4 tablespoons worth of the oil.
And the whisking is to help with that emulsification.
Right, you just want it to come together and kind of create that creaminess. If you don't whisk vigorously and pour slowly, you're going to just have that oil and vinegar separate like we already had before.
Okay.
Okay, so just little by little we're adding it in there.
So good.
And this is just going to go with our greens and our beets and our salad. It's going to be a delicious combination.
So the one thing, as you notice, is that we did use a raw egg. So what would you say in terms of food safety?
This is obviously a vinaigrette that's you want to eat fairly quickly. It will survive comfortably 2 to 3 days in the fridge.
Okay.
You obviously want to make sure your eggs are pasteurized, so they're
Right.
coming from the grocery store, and you're not leaving this out on the counter for an hour or anything longer. It's bring it out of the fridge, use it, put it back in the fridge, sort of thing. So there we go. We've got our vinaigrette ready. We've got our marinade ready. We've got our beets ready to go. We're prepped. Now it's time to go out to the grill.
Perfect. Here we're at the grill again. What are some things that we should do prior to grilling our meat, Paul?
Well, you always want to make sure that you kind of got rid of last night's residue or residual cooking. So it's important to clean your grill off, especially when we're going to be cooking with salmon like we are today.
Right.
So do you want to tackle that, or do you want me to go after it?
I think I will let you tackle that.
Okay. So you just want to, I like to kind of let the grill heat up first, and then give it a pretty
Does that
firm
make it
clean.
easier to
I find
get
it's
some of that
easier
char off?
to get it off.
All right.
As a matter of fact, I try to make a point of when I close the grill for the night, before I turn it off, I give it a good cleaning. Just makes it a little bit easier, but at the very least, before you start your next cooking, you want to make sure you're starting with a nice clean surface.
And one of the reasons for that is that char can then transfer to your meat. And again, that's more carcinogen or some of those cancer-causing chemicals that we don't necessarily want in our meat.
You're right, exactly. So another thing that I want to do, not for every dish, but when I'm working with fish, I've got a lightly oiled, I'll just use a little bit of olive oil here.
And what is that going to do? It's going
rag.
to prevent some sticking then?
It's going to minimize the sticking for me and just kind of make it easier, just lightly oiling it. Do keep in mind that you're probably not going to use this for anything good again. I usually keep one underneath the grill that I can just use occasionally. Okay.
And that's a really good tip, because I know salmon can tend to be a bit flakier, and we don't want to lose that salmon if we're moving it around on the grill.
You bet. And this is one that you actually want a fairly high heat for as well too, so you can avoid that excess sticking. Although it's almost unavoidable. You will run into a little bit of issues, but don't be intimidated by it. As long as you get it off the grill, it all tastes good anyways, right? So we'll get our pieces on. Now we've got our flesh side here, and we've got our skin side. I always like to go flesh side down first. That's the side that I'm going to be presenting to guests. Always thinking as a chef sort of thing. So.
And I think when you have questions about where your salmon is coming from, feel free to talk to people at the grocery store so that you know that you are getting a sustainable product. Now, the wild salmon, on the other hand, is going to be a bit leaner than the farm salmon. The one advantage of wild salmon, though, is that it's going to contain more omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3 fatty acids, of course, are important for our cardiovascular health. They're going to help lower cholesterol. They're going to keep our blood nice and thin, prevent our blood from becoming sticky, which is important for blood, or cardiovascular health rather, again. So wild salmon, great choice for omega-3 fatty acids. Farm salmon, of course, will have some omega-3 fatty acids too, so I think it's okay to have both.
So while we're waiting for our salmon to cook, we've assembled our beet salad as well too. We've got 2 whole beets that I've just cut up into wedges underneath there. They're hidden a little bit at this point because we've got some beautiful spring mix with a little bit of fresh dill right in there as well too. Just some dill friends right in the salad. A little bit of our vinaigrette, finish it off with a little goat cheese and some candied pecans, because we want to have a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of flavor in there.
Well, and those pecans, they give it a nice crunch. That goat cheese, again, it's a little bit more flavorful or pungent rather than I would say regular cheese, the cow cheese. But again, that's probably a taste preference. But you don't need much of the goat cheese. It goes a long way.
You certainly don't need a ton at all. I want to talk about this as well now, because we've been talking about marinades. We want to make sure that this is the time, once I flip this over and I'm probably about 70% of the way cooking, that's when I'm going to put my marinade on these salmon. And I'm going to put it on that top flesh side, the presentation side I talked about once I flipped it over. I'm actually just going to give it probably a minute or so here. We're going to close the lid, just allow the heat from the top to sort of caramelize the flavors in that marinade without overwhelming it or burning it. So we've let our salmon cook and the marinade to kind of just come together on the top. We're just going to stick a thermometer in to get an idea of where we're at.
For fish, I believe it's about 165 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah. I would say with salmon you can get away with about 158 to 160. It's
Oh,
probably a good temperature, because you want to preserve the moistness and the flavor. So there we go.
We have such a beautiful plate here.
Yeah, we got a fantastic balance of all of our key ingredients that we need. We've got a delicious protein in our salmon that's got a beautiful mustard and dill marinade on there. We've got a great beet salad that's got some beautifully roasted beets, our mixed greens, and then we finished it off with a little bit of wild rice pilaf. So a nice blend of everything we need.
It's a perfectly balanced plate. We have a little bit of starch, which is about the size of my fist. We have about 2 fists of our beautiful vegetables and about 4 or 5 ounces of our salmon, which is excellent. So we're getting everything that we need. This is, I can't wait to eat this.
Me too.